so we start to capture
And you know,
the flavor of this.
what we might do, since Steve has to leave at 5:30, if everyone does a short presencing, kind of who you are, where you are with regard to this topic, and then we give Steve an opportunity, you know, to speak for a little bit on some of the questions about right livelihood, which we can formulate ourselves, or you can use the ones that we were just thinking about.
So why don't we ask you to go first around the circle, Steve, and then we'll come back to you.
Sure. Yeah. Well, like Jonathan said, I mean, we've been in the movement I call the greening of society, which has many aspects, macro level, and micro level. At the macro level, I work with the Green Party movement, which is worldwide. It's really good that it's a worldwide movement, but it's hard going to change things at the macro level. Politically, is very incremental, very difficult, and especially in this country where anything outside of the two establishment parties is hardly taken seriously. But that work has to be done, and then all down from the macro level to the micro level, where Jonathan and Victoria and I were doing a project trying to get an eco-village started in New Jersey, and we can talk more about that, but that's enough from me to start.
You want to pass it on?
I'll pass it on to Vivek.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, just
Okay.
fine.
Okay, I have so to provide some context, I'm in an old farmhouse in Texas right now, and it's about 104 degrees outside, and I have like this one little air conditioner going, and the electric utility is like right at that edge where it's like there could be outages. So interesting times for where I am, you know, being in a place where there's drought and watching, you know, just a lot of things that would be alive in earlier years not be alive. So just to provide a context of where I'm coming from, it's kind of been interesting to be in this situation compared to kind of earlier years of my life. I kind of came into this kind of in response to, partly to support Jonathan, and also because we've been having these comments, and I feel like I've been not an antagonist, but like just like that questioner in regards to some of his needs about like he was asking about like an offers and needs market, and I feel like somebody has, I felt like compelled to kind of ask these questions along the way to kind of, you know, provoke like a bit of depth around that. And then the other thing, I guess, I don't know if this call is going to be about that context per se, but you know, there's other things that I'm curious about how you were attempting to frame this conversation around, say, like this Charles Eisenstein film, and you know, what does that cover, what does that not cover, and what does that mean for, you know, what we've learned in, say, like from, say, like someone like Joe Brewer in his learning journey. So that's, I'm curious, a listener, and then also kind of to kind of maybe poke a little bit when I can. So thanks. Great. And I'll pass to is it Darren?
Aloha, I'm Darren from Honolulu. My expertise is as a generational master beekeeper and a teacher of Hawaiian medicine plants. And Shane, please.
Hey, I'm Shane. I mean, a fairly dry part of the world, it seems, too, in central Ontario, but probably not quite a drought. And I'm 52 years old and trying to figure out what to do with my life, basically.
Well, thank you so much for all being here. I did want to say, just in connection with giving Steve most of the floor, that we alternate the times for these calls to make sure that you know, on one Wednesday, the second Wednesday, I believe, or the fourth Wednesday, it's at 8 o'clock Eastern. And on the second Wednesday, it's at 5 o'clock Eastern. And apparently that's enough of a difference to enable our European colleagues to join us on one call and our Australian and New Zealand colleagues to join us on another call. So that's why we decided to do it that way. Initially, we only thought we would do one a month, but there seems to be interest. Probably more on the other call than on this one, but it just gives us an opportunity to go deeper.
More
into this
people
whole
on the
area.
other call. There's some, maybe 10 people.
12, I think was
12,
the
okay.
last count. So
You're welcome to do both or one or the other.
Right.
You don't need to stay with any.
And the whole idea came up from a conversation that we had in one of the Earth Regenerators discussion groups, where Victoria suggested that maybe people were struggling with what would be the right livelihood for them, something that would be consistent with their values and would give them an opportunity to make a difference in the world and make a living. This question of making a living, it's always been a strange thing to talk about earning a living as if we didn't deserve one to begin with. But we all know what that's like. So I'm going to let Victoria say.
Yeah, and just to presence myself, I'm doing all kinds of explorations about regenerative development, design, Earth Regenerators, and also at my spiritual level of who am I? What did I come to Earth for?
Oh, great. Here comes Atta. And
Okay.
we'll maybe give her a chance to say
Sure.
something before.
Yeah. So sometimes I think I know, and then it moves a little bit. But the two questions that I came up with that we could engage with, but I'd say people can really talk about what they'd like to talk about right livelihood, is how do you know your purpose in life? If you know it, or if you're looking for it, how do you discover it? When do you know you have it? Anything about that. And then once you discover your purpose, how do you go about finding right livelihood, whether you need to earn money or not? And it's specific to each person. How have you gone about it, or would you, or do you, or issues around that. So who are you about? Who are you, and how do you find the place where inside of an organization's mission that you can fulfill yourself? And it's more and more becoming common that leaders of organizations realize that the more people get to fulfill on their own missions and visions inside of the context of their work, the more engaged they are, the more productive they are, the more valuable they are. So I will,
Yes.
and we're in New Jersey. So,
No, we're actually not in New
oh no,
Jersey
we're in New
anymore.
York. Okay.
We
We
were in
moved.
New Jersey for 30 years, which is really remarkable. And we have been in Rochester, New York for a little under 2 years. So that's where we are now. And Atta, would you like to introduce yourself and say a little bit about what you would like to get from this call?
And then just to know that Steve, who can only join us until 5:30. So
we're gonna
let him
dominate the floor
Yeah.
afterwards and
Yeah.
Maybe provoke us with some questions. Can you unmute, Atta?
Yes. Hi. I'm sorry, I'm still driving. I was more interested to listen more than give a lot of input. So I'm not sure what.
perfectly fine. Where are you calling from?
Right now, I live in San Jose, California.
Ah,
I'm originally from Poland, and yeah, and this topic feels like very personal to me, where I feel like I'm going through a collapse or one part of my life of living in United States for 20 years as an immigrant, and now situation when like because of vaccination, no vaccination, is really hard for me to find a job. Now I'm thinking about going back to Poland, not necessary that I want to, but that might be, yeah, and also that might be my only choice right now. And also I think part of the topic was about finding the purpose, which I'm also, even though I'm not 20 anymore, that's still something that I'm in search for. Yeah, I didn't quite feel like I found exactly what's my purpose in life. So
You're not alone at all ages.
Right. Right. I guess the way it shows up a little bit for us is, what are we on Earth to do? What are we here for? And so, do you want to
Steve.
say anything else, Steve? Let's hear from you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Atta.
Okay. So what attracted me to ER was the bioregional catalysts. And for a long time, like I read, the original book about bioregionalism, which is still, to me, it just answers an awful lot of questions, goes back to 1985, Kirkpatrick Sale, but I read it a long time ago, and I think these nation states are crazy. They're too big, and you can't really be democratic. So I've believed in that vision for a long time, and you see very little about it. And so when I saw Bioregional Catalysts with ER, I said, oh my God, that's so great. There's some like-minded people there. And I think that's our ultimate destination, is to get back to living bioregionally. I mean, human beings for millions of years, they live bioregionally, see? And this recent couple of thousand years of the states and the empires is just an aberration, and we got to get past that. But the way to get past it, I have thought, is to establish eco-villages, and then the networking of the eco-villages can become the basis for the bioregional reorganization of society. So to me, that's like what to do, I mean, in a strategic way. Let me just close the door here because I got some noise coming.
Sure. Sure.
Now, when it comes to, so that's a fairly straightforward vision or project. There's lots and lots and lots of things to do, but to create eco-villages and then from there develop a bioregional reorganization of our society is a project of its own. Now, when it comes to right livelihood, I mean, it folds right in. I have Jonathan and Victoria, I have a good friend, Vicky. Remember Vicky Tredinick? Did you ever know Vicky? She's moved, she's by you now. She's in Ithaca at the Eco Village in Ithaca.
Oh.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, we ought to get together. So I'm going to be visiting there a lot. But anyway, I was there last weekend. I took my my youngest grandson. My grandchildren have been watching videos about the Eco Village with a lot of interest. So I took the youngest one to visit the Eco Village in Ithaca. Now, when it comes to right livelihood, I'm going to put forward something which I think is provocative, as you say, it's provocative. And it's this: when you go, the Eco Village at Ithaca, if you don't know about it, just go to Google and type in Eco Village at Ithaca. It's one of the best models of what it is that I think we need to be after in the Eco Village movement. But when you go there, here's the thing: there's an awful lot of work to be done to sustain the Eco Village. So this one has 100 houses, 100 units. 250 people, intergenerational, 3 neighborhoods of clustered houses. It's very, very thriving, and it's very, very dynamic. But to sustain life in the eco-village takes a lot of work. So my provocative thing to say is that I think when we go out from our domiciles to work for the institutions of the Leviathan, whether it's the corporations or the nation states, or even the large nonprofits, when we go out and work for those institutions, we are sustaining the Leviathan. When right livelihood, I think, would be to sustain our communities. There's so much work to be done to sustain our communities. So right livelihood to me is that if you can create a real thriving community where people are sustaining life together in a settlement like the eco-village at Ithaca, you could be producing, I mean, they have 4 farms there, orchard, different kinds of farms. They produce an awful lot of their food. And if you live simply enough, you could produce in a real settlement. I don't mean like 10 co-housing of 10, households that get together. That's nice. That's nice to start to create community. But you can't thrive in a co-housing community of 10 households, but you can thrive when you're talking about a critical mass of people who get together and live lightly on the earth. And I think that the only way that we're going to really be able to live lightly on the earth is to do it together, sharing a lot, encouraging each other a lot, creating culture together a lot, so that in a sizable eco-village, an awful lot of life can be lived within. You're going to have to do some trading and blah, blah, blah. But right livelihood would be mostly just to sustain life together with the other people in your eco-village. What you see, when it comes like Victoria and Atta, when you see in our society that's so alienated, that depends on the institutions of this Leviathan, which is a monster. The word Leviathan means monster. What we live within is monstrous. It's destroying the earth. It's stressing people and it's stressing the planet. For us to go out and work for the institutions of the Leviathan is sustaining the Leviathan. So to the extent that we don't need, now that depends on creating settlements and communities where we can thrive together. But when we do that, then don't go out and work for those institutions, right? Livelihood would be simply working for each other, supporting each other in a direct way within our eco-village. That's my provocative statement.
That's so interesting. And there are people in Ithaca who are able to make a living right in the community, right? I know there's at least one person who does pottery or artwork or things like that.
Yeah, but you see, when you say making a living,
yes,
we have to change the whole paradigm. We're just sustaining life together. We don't even really, in Ithaca, they have Ithaca hours, right? It's their own currency, see? We don't have to, if we could live within, of course, look, I understand what I'm saying is, first you gotta have the community to do this, right? You can't do it in isolation. But I think we should be striving to create eco communities, and then right livelihood falls within the sustenance of that community. And we don't even have to think anymore about the concept of making a living. We're just sustaining life together.
right. Well, I guess one thing that I can think of that might be a response to that concept is that that's all well and good, but we have a crisis on our hands in the planet. And so some of us need to be outside of eco-villages or from within eco-villages reaching out to the rest of
Yes.
the world.
Right. That's right. No, I'm not saying there's a concept called autarky, which means that you just pay attention to your eco village, right? You see, and you don't worry about trading or anything. I don't mean that at all. No, of course not. So sustaining life together would be at the local, and it would be at the bioregional level, you know, and running as a Green Party candidate to affect the broader society. But I'm saying that right livelihood is proceeding along those lines and trying to stay away from working for the institutions of the Leviathan.
Great.
No, I'd love to hear from other people. The way, Darren, that we do it, just to be fair, is you go to the reaction button and click raise your hand when you want to speak. And so we have an order. And we speak, and then we let people speak in order. And if some people have spoken a lot, we'll go to somebody who hasn't spoken. That's
Right. And I'm done.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad that you shared that. That's a whole new paradigm for me. I like it. Steve is brilliant and totally committed.
Okay.
It's
So,
a mutual admiration society.
right. So if you go to the bottom of the screen over on towards the right-hand side, you should see something that says reactions.
Can you unmute yourself, Darren? Oh,
So
Yeah.
I don't think I have that in this version, or this computer doesn't have those. So I'll just in
oh,
chat.
sure. You know what you should do? No, just raise your hand.
That's another way to do it. Yes, physically.
And then we'll put you in the order in which you're raising your hand, because there's not a lot of us. We can keep track. And you don't have to respond to Steve, although I think before he leaves in the next 5 minutes, it'd be great for people who want to interact with that. That would be great. Just give it a minute.
Yes.
So this is something I've been thinking about. So when I was from 8th grade to high school-ish area in the US, near Chicago, my first mentor outside of family members was the vice president of McDonald's. So he left McDonald's, and the way he framed it to me, 8th grade me, was it was too much. It was immoral what he was doing, but he reaped all the benefits, meaning he was the vice president of McDonald's. He wasn't poor. And the short version is he then helped the church. And I was one of his, well, a mentee. That framed my way of thinking of right livelihood would be the way we're putting it right now in this frame. But that was significant to me.
Right.
Tell us what it meant to you and how it translated in your life. Because, you know, as a master beekeeper, is that your passion and why you're here?
So the short version, our food system in the world is dependent on basically a few key states, meaning that they're now corporation states. The food system is dependent on our pollinators, and that's even before this gets to the seeds part. There's things in our biodiversity, and this is what I need to practice here, is being able to explain this clearly enough in 90 seconds. So it's these huge problems at the local level. I think I had the benefit of the mentoring by the vice president of McDonald's, and my father, and learning traditional, it's Hawaiian medicine plants at the hand of the expert in the Pacific region. That's those all things are helping me in my passion, mission, aim for what is this crux. The hugest problem in the world is if we lose all bees and bats and native species bees, and that would cause a whole collapse of a system, and then people would wake up. But until then, we need these alarms set off, and I'll agree with Steve. There needs to be somebody there to nourish that, like, because it has to come from somewhere. And I don't have the answer exactly how things can get to the level. And I'll use the university example. They bring in teams of VCs and they want to teach students, and that's their pipeline. I don't think you can have a pipeline of people wanting to be regenerative without a system like an eco village. Like, I don't think you can have that in mass without some kind of catalyst. And that's what I'm hearing. I'm trying to be generous too, that I want, instead of our normal Western thinking way of, yes, this is good, or yes, that is bad, we should hear like, how long-term can it be? Or, okay, what are the inputs? And then what are the ways that we can use that as a model, and then take what we can feed into it and take what we can. Yes, now I'm starting to babble. So we still need somehow that catalyst is what I'm trying to say.
Right. My question would just be, has this allowed you to connect with your community in such a way that you're comfortable, you're satisfied with your life, and you feel like it's meaningful, and you're doing what you came here to do as a, in the larger sense?
And that you have enough resources to sustain you and your family.
So no, I have a normal job, so that pays bills. And no, I'm at the proof of concept level, and that I need either outside funding or funding in order to do this work, meaning proving it to the US government. And I don't want to take up Steve's time. So,
and what is, okay, yeah, Steve, if you want to say something, great. Yeah. And I was just interested in the what. What do you want to show the government? How much bees are important and what we need to do to support them?
Short version, antibiotics are not a solution for long-term regenerative.
So any thoughts before you go, Steve?
Well, it's really a big discussion. I think what you're doing here is great to be addressing this discussion. It can go on and on for quite a while. I mean, but to me, a basis is to start to understand, the society, the whole society is insane, and the way that we do things with us poor individuals, where the idea is, you go to college, and then you have to think of in terms of careers and jobs, and then for the rest of our lives, it's like you meet at a party, and what's the first question? What do you do? And what you do then is this siloed. I work for this corporation doing this particular task, and that's where I'm a manager, and that's my career. I mean, it's so siloed, and it's so atomized that it's sad. It's really sad. Oh, I have to find a job in the economy. I have to find a career path to follow. That's all a very alienating thing. And eventually, the idea would be to get away from thinking in terms of jobs and careers. And again, it's like there's life that there's in a household. There's so much that has to be done in a household. And I'll tell you one thing about our society, to take us out of starting with the household, no less the community, to take us out of the household and go somewhere to an institution to support that institution. We are so neglecting our households. There's a very interesting book. All right, look at the size of this book. See, Home Comforts. There is so much to do in a household to properly write livelihood, properly maintain and sustain the household, that it's criminal that we wake up. If we wake up at 7 and we leave the house at 8 and we come back at 5 or 6, very, very tired, we are so neglecting our households, not to mention that if you live in a community, between your household and the community, there's way more to do than you can possibly do. So it's a distraction for us to be thinking in terms of going out to these stupid, alienating jobs. They are stupid and they are alienating. And even these careers, it's such a siloed thing. So I got to go, so we're homeschooling during the pandemic, we're homeschooling our 3 grandchildren. That should take up hours and hours of one's time. To raise children is an enormous amount. When we go out and work for those institutions, we're neglecting our children. The society is neglecting its children, it's neglecting its households, and it's neglecting its communities for these stupid things called jobs and careers. I gotta go. Like I say,
Love it.
what I'm saying is, you can see it's raising, and others have raised. It's a very big discussion, but it's a very important discussion, and I'm glad that you're doing it. And the next time I come up to Ithaca, I'll make some time to visit you in Rochester.
Or we can come down to Ithaca.
Yeah,
That'd be cool. Let's have dinner.
There's a
at
lot
the
of
meet-
people who want to live in eco villages around here, and they haven't yet been to. So if you find a day that they're doing tours, and they can accommodate, another group, at the same time, that would be very cool.
yeah, just let us know and we'll keep going.
Okay, yeah,
Thank you so much.
I think I can participate more. Next one's 8 p.m. you say?
Yes, 2 weeks from now, 8 p.m.
Okay, I'll see you then.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
And just before we go to Shane, I did want to say, for the benefit of those who might be relatively new to Earth Regenerators, that this is not just a theoretical discussion, but is a practical issue with regard to how we support each other in this community. And Earth Regenerators is being seen by some folks as a bioregion of its own in the digital world, and how we take care of each other, how we engage with each other to understand what the issues are and what we need to do. And we're also, it turns out Joe Brewer is a pretty good person at raising money. And so he's been raising money for Barichara. And we are now also raising money for the Earth Regenerators Fund generally to support people in right livelihoods, amongst other things. And Joe's intention is to build an ecoversity in Barichara. And presumably a lot of people would be living in the community around it. It's a small town already. So they would be, really focused on that. But
And the idea is that each bioregion would have its own ecoversity, because someone needs to collect all that information and coordinate, that kind of thing. By the way, is there a lot of background noise on our computer?
A little bit.
Yeah, I know.
Let me see if I. Did
Does
that
that
make any
help?
difference?
No, didn't help. Is it terribly distracting? Because we can go back to earphones. Okay, all right.
Okay,
Okay, thanks.
No,
Okay.
I'm not having much problem.
sorry?
So,
I was just going to say that I'm not really feeling any. There's been a bit of scratchy stuff, but that's it. I mean, you're here, you're
oh,
fine.
good, good.
I don't have any problems anyway. Am I up? Am I going?
Yeah,
Yeah,
One. I was going to respond to Steve at some point. On a theoretical level, the idea, maybe a realization came to me a while ago, and in the capitalist industrialist framework, probably, was that livelihood is almost dependent upon providing value to somebody else rather than to oneself. I mean, it has nothing to do with the value it provides to oneself, because you exchange that for the presumption that somebody else is benefiting from whatever it is you call work. Which is fine, I suppose, but it is a trade-off. Also, I know you're probably curious, so I'm just going to share that I was in the garden this morning, and what I'm eating are my black currants. I have a pint of them here. I feel very rich. Whoa. And they're waking me up. I was falling asleep there, so I had to move and eat black currants to wake up. Okay, so the last time I was with you, and I'm sorry, this started and I joined into the conversation, and then I'm not sure what happened, but I didn't get reminders and I forgot. So I found you again. And Victoria, you had talked. I had mentioned an interest in native plants, and you said some very encouraging things that got me all excited, and I, ventured out there and talked to a couple of people, and I didn't really work that hard at it, and so not surprisingly, not much has happened in it, but it's still in my mind. I have for the others, I just have a strong interest in repopulating right now my urban center with native flora. I say a strong interest. That's probably an exaggeration, because I think I'm having difficulty with two factors. I think is one is energy, just the seemingly insurmountable forces I'm opposed or working in the context of. And related to that is just efficiency, working smart rather than working hard. And maybe I'm not getting that. But the other, I think, is probably more difficult for me, is a real lack of confidence in my capacity to lead anybody and to direct anybody and to say to anybody, what you're doing could be better if you did it like this. Or, even how to word that is a challenge for me. And undermines my feeling that I can do anything at all. So I mean, I do pay bills with some editing work, and I manage a small renewable energy cooperative, which is at this point basically managing money that some local investors have put into renewable energy projects that we own. And there's a small amount of research on building upgrades and heat pumps, kind of fighting that little carbon battle here, which bores the hell out of me. I don't have any interest in it, and so I've got no spirit in it. What excites me is sitting on the bench in front of my house, in front of my asters in the fall, and showing little children the bees hugging the flowers and passing out from the glory of the pollen. It's, that's joy. That's like a huge thing for me. And okay, I'm digging a little deep here, but that's what I would like to do with my life somehow. I have no idea who's going to think that's valuable enough to
Yeah,
feed.
no, but thank you for sharing, you know, everything that you said about your feelings, your energy levels, what you're actually doing out there in the world, and what you would like to be doing, what calls to you, what lights you up, as they say, because that's so important. And, you know, obviously, no one of us has answers for everyone else, but together we can talk about some things that might be helpful to each other. And so, did you want to say some things?
Yeah, we've got plenty of time. So all kinds of ideas have come up to me that I would, suggest to you that are natural for me to think of, but they may not be natural for you to think of. And other people around this, screen may have, ideas that have come up about, or questions that would get you closer to being in ecstasy, doing what you love, which is a good indication of what you're here for.
And other people may just want to share their stories as well. And
But I think
sometimes we find insights in other people sharing rather than in the direct addressing of questions.
And
so,
that might be good if we hear from Atta and Vivek, and then we do another round and
Yes.
figure out, that might be good. So that would.
Yeah, if I may say, I'm just like I didn't put that out like I'm looking for answers or a path.
Of course.
It helped me to get to that point where I was able to express a love.
And one
I'd
of
love
the
to hear
things-
others. I'd love to hear from others about.
Yeah, one of the things that I did want to say, though, which was kind of astonishing to me, was you said that you're working with this renewable energy cooperative, but it bores you, or it's not exciting about that. Whereas for some other people, being part of a renewable energy cooperative would be what they aspire to and what would turn them on. So it's
that was me 10 years ago, right?
right. Got it. Great.
But 10 years later, I'm somewhere else.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Vivek, I know you were thinking of speaking a couple of times. Can you do so now?
Yeah, I think this was a response to what Steve had. And I can tell Steve has a lot of energy from so much that he's done in his perspective world, right? And what was coming up for me is something that probably comes up in, say, like Joe Brewer's learning journeys and such, which is I take a step back and remind myself to hold a paradox around things. Especially some of the most sensitive topics, or the ones like telling everybody to, suddenly go local, at least from a systemic perspective. So I tell myself I remind myself very often to hold paradoxes around certain things, because I've spent a lot of my life looking at like the efficiency curve of something. Well, I got to go right for the most efficient thing, it's kind of an engineering mindset. And the other thing is probably one of, how does one remain in inquiry, whether they're pursuing what might be a right to livelihood or otherwise. So it's I just wanted to offer that as just something after Steve's narrative, just to help us take a step back.
Right. And I did want to say that I was very intrigued by your discussions online on the Earth Regenerators Network, Mighty Network site, about the context for this conversation. And part of the context, I realize, is so that we can share experiences with each other and learn from each other and learn what's possible. And it's also very much this evolving and emerging effort to work together One of the, because our nonprofit has become the fiscal sponsor for the whole of the Earth Regenerators network. We spend a lot of time thinking about the money side of it, what's going on financially and how we can bring in more revenue and donations and cryptocurrency and how to manage that all and how to manage it transparently and fairly and engage people so that they have a sense of ownership in the community, because it is, this is what they call a self-directed community. It's a DAO, whatever that is. So we want people engaged with all of the different aspects of it. But this is a really great place to start in terms of asking what would actually work for us and make a difference for us as human beings. And we're all in different situations. So let's see if we can go from there.
And Vivek, I sometimes my mind is going and I don't hear. Could you just say again what you were saying, so I know where you're coming from? If you could put together what you said.
You mean in terms of my background, or just like those two kind of framings I have?
Just what you were saying.
Oh,
I can't.
Oh, the two phrases. One was like holding the paradox around things. Sometimes it's easy to slip into like seeking only like one direction, like the most local livelihood or something, and yet there's, that may not be the right role for oneself. I'm kind of offering like a hold the paradox around that, especially if you're, someone in the global north, suddenly saying that and not holding the, complexities of, say, like climate refugees or something else. Like I'm just saying there's no easy answer. And then the other would be
oh, you went on mute.
You went on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. The other phrase was remaining in inquiry.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's very good.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, great. Ata, where are you in this conversation?
I'm a little lost. Yeah, I'm trying to grasp what you guys are talking about. So I don't think at this moment I have anything to add.
Okay.
Not sure
It could
what
just
to
be,
add.
your thoughts about right livelihood. You're seeking, what is it I'm here to do, right? That's where you are.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I want to put my attention to. Yeah.
Yeah, so if people have ways that they have discerned that for themselves, that might be helpful for you to listen to how people have kind of figured it out for themselves.
Well,
maybe not. Maybe not. So if there's a question that you have that you'd love to either hear other people's thoughts about or just share.
And if you'd be willing to share some about your circumstances, your experience of life, and where you have what has brought you to this question of purpose and right livelihood. That's a question.
I guess I don't understand what means livelihood exactly. I don't know what that means.
Right. Well,
if you guys.
Yes. So the term right livelihood is widely used in Buddhism, and it means what's appropriate or not appropriate for a Buddhist to do for for work in the world. So, and they have a specific set of things, and their right livelihood is part of what's called the Eightfold Path to peace, inner peace. Finding your your place in the world, your relationship to the world, and how you choose to interact with it. So that's one kind of idea of it. Another is there is this international thing called the Right Livelihoods Award, which is given to people, who are remarkable inspirational leaders, like, Wangari Maathai in Africa, who started the whole movement to plant 1 million trees and build a green corridor across Africa. So that's another idea of it, is people who have made these extraordinary contributions to others. But I think for us, the question really is, how can we address this issue of regenerating the earth, which we understand increasingly to be urgent? The pollinators, the climate crisis, the habitat destruction, et cetera, not to mention all the other ills of society as a result of what we have created in so-called Western civilization. But how do we ourselves transition into doing things that we can feel good about because we know that they're regenerating the earth for ourselves and for others? And so that's kind of why we're in this community, is looking to see what can we contribute. Because ultimately, making a contribution that makes a difference in the lives of others is enormously satisfying. And so I wonder,
Just like Shane was saying, he just feels joy, and look what he's contributing to children. I mean, it's important. Nobody else is doing that.
so can you say a little about your circumstances, if you're willing to?
Yeah. I think I don't want to be wrongly understood that I don't care about Earth Regenerators, or the idea that I want to take care of the planet. And the problem for me right now is because I'm more of a living in survival mode. Anything else beyond how can I take care of myself to have a shelter and food becomes more of a secondary issue. It feels to me more of a privilege talk than something that I can directly relate and put my energy into it right now. So that's why it's a little difficult for me to talk about how I can help the earth and how I can contribute to the changes that are needed, which I agree they are needed. So that's why I think at this point I want to be more of a listener than adding too much, because it feels like you guys a little bit on different level than I am.
Well, I'm so glad you shared that. And most of the world, we can't expect to do any of the things that Western society is doing. I mean, composting and recycling is just like, if you're, what we call hand to mouth, you make money and then you eat it, or you pay for your rent, and whatever is left over, maybe, so with people in that circumstance, I don't think anybody is expecting them to contribute in that way. I think that the people that I know in this movement would say it's our job to make the lives of those people easier so they can contribute, so that they're not worried about where they're going to sleep, what they're going to eat, clothes, so. And have you ever heard of the Maslow hierarchy of human needs?
Yeah.
Self-actualization's at the top. The basic level is your basic needs. And so
Right.
nobody is
Right.
arguing with that. I mean, you don't have to feel guilty or, ashamed or whatever. It's just the opposite. It should be people like you saying, I think you're forgetting that there's a lot of the world that can't afford to do what you're saying because they just have to get some money to keep themselves going. And
Yeah, I mean,
the opportunity is if you could spend a little time saying, what would I love to do? And be able to express that to people, then they could help you get the money doing the kinds of things you love, in order to better yourself and be able to have more time to do the things that you would love to do.
yeah, I think that sounds more closer to that I can relate to. Like when Shane, I think Shane was talking about taking care of the bees and sharing this passion with kids, and that will bring him joy. It kind of brought me back a long time ago when I used to have some dreams. And it kind of like, oh yeah, what actually would inspire me to think like, what is the things that I would like to do that will bring me joy and will be beneficial to other people? Like, for example, something close to psychosomatic therapy. I think that's something that I'm very interested in. I just don't know how to, at this point, making this my, I think that you said livelihood.
Yes, well, I can
Right.
actually connect
that
you
was-
with somebody who works on that, so continue
Oh, there
on.
you
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I'm saying like I'm picking little pieces from here, like reminding myself that it is that it's life beyond survival. Then so even hearing about the story about these gave me a little bit reminder about it. So I appreciate that. So I think that's kind of at this point.
Well, that's
I
what
think
this
that's all I
work,
can.
that's what this call is about remembering your dreams and updating them to say specifically now, that was then, this is now, what would I love? And, we could have another conversation. I'm spending a lot of time and money learning how to have the universe be in concert with my dreams to accelerate the process and bring money along with it. And it has everything to do with what you're thinking and nothing to do with your circumstances, because the universe doesn't really care about circumstances. Like, the clearer we can be in articulating it to ourselves and really believing that, but that might be another conversation. But that is, the kind of journey I've been on the last kind of year and a half or so is, what do I really want? What would I love? What would it look like in every aspect? Because why think of anything else? And so, and this work with Mary Morrissey is that you get so close to being that person, living that life right now. And when you get to that vibration, this is stuff I don't understand totally, but what they say is when you are vibrating at that level of the person who would have done those things, that's when the universe connects with you and provides those things. It's like you create it in your mind, you be it, and the universe moves too. There's all kinds of quotes and books and whatever that says, this is what I did, this is how it worked. And every single time it can be reduced to that kind of thing in so many different traditions. And you'll also, when you're being who that person would be, you attract people who can help you, who can partner with you, will give you ideas. And so I'm happy to have an individual call if you want.
Sure.
I'm no expert in this, but we'll put our information,
Yeah, and I did want to also bring another additional piece of the context into this because of what I see that Earth Regenerators is about. And I also want to welcome Lisa Gavronsky. And if you can hear us, that's great. You can speak.
Hi, I can hear you guys. Sorry, I can't turn my camera on right now. I'm using the wrong computer, but
Okay, but we'll invite you in a moment to share some things about yourself and introduce yourself to the rest of the group so that we include you fully. The thing that I wanted to say was that what Victoria was talking about was finding within yourself the ability to, express your vision and empower yourself. At the same time, when you look around at the rest of the world and the millions and literally billions of people who are in this kind of struggle as well, what you begin to think is that the solutions require community. They require, if each of us acts as an individual, we'll never be able to change the system, and we'll, often not be able to support ourselves and our families. But what if we can join together in communities, we can make a difference. And so Earth Regenerators, which has really grown out of Joe Brewer's book, The Design Pathway for Regenerating Earth, is a community of folks who increasingly look to their relationships with each other to provide not only inspiration, but also practical support. At one point, Joe Brewer challenged a number of us to distribute $5,000, which he had raised through one of the crowdfunding platforms, and was not needed at that moment for the projects that he was engaged in. And he really sees that there's a capacity within this community, within this network, to support each other in very practical ways. And so we're in discussions about how to do that, both with fiat currency and with cryptocurrency, because there is something called the Regen Network, which is building blockchain, tokens related to regenerative agriculture, and able to sell those into the marketplace. They sold $12.5 million worth of offsets to Microsoft, for example, and they are interested in collaborating with Earth Regenerators and giving us a fund that, when they first proposed this, was worth $500,000. Now, because of the crash in cryptocurrency values, it's worth about 1/5 of that, but it's still $100,000 worth of tokens that we can use and build on and begin to create an endowment fund to support fellowships and stipends and things for people connected with the ecoversity and connected with the kinds of issues that we see all around us. So there's ultimately some practical purpose to all of this. And I just wanted to add that. And do you want to say anything else, or can we ask Lisa?
I do want, but there's just one thing also that occurred to me, is that if you're interested in psychosomatic illness and helping people that have psychosomatic illness, there's going to be a whole lot of people who have climate somatic illness. Like, they're so devastated, they're so unsure that it's screwing up their life. And getting those people to put it into perspective and put themselves into work into it, in a productive way, and having them see another side, like the regenerative side, not just the collapse side. But it might be that there's a whole new field of people. Well, I know there is a whole new field of people that are doing that kind of work, that are studying that are writing about it. Oh, there's a ton of work about how climate anxiety is impacting people. So, I mean, if you're interested in climate and you're interested in psychosomatic, that is a big new field.
And the person I want to connect you with, I'll do this online on Mighty Networks. So I'll make the connection between the two of you. His name is Langdon Roberts, and he's actually owns the Biofeedback Center in California, I believe. You know, certainly is somebody who talks quite eloquently about these challenges. And so maybe a useful connection, and maybe able to point in some directions that could actually fulfill your dreams.
So Jonathan will put his contact information, but Atta, if you could put yours, then Jonathan can connect you with Langdon.
Yeah, and I can also do it right on Mighty Networks. It operates kind of like.
Only if Atta is going to look there.
Yes.
Do you look on Earth Regenerators as a communication?
For me?
Do you use Earth Regenerators as a communication vehicle? Because unless you set it up, it won't put it into your Gmail or your other email accounts. It's just internal.
The default is they don't send you any notifications about messages. So you have to kind of turn that on yourself if you want to get messages from other people in the community.
But that's why email
think
in the beginning is
Yeah,
better.
if you put your email in the chat, and I'll put mine, we can exchange information that way. So, but
Hold on, she wants to, you want to say something?
I think I don't know if you guys understood that I'm not a psychosomatic therapist yet. That's kind of where I'm struggling is because I'm in the survival place. I'm not able to focus on like maybe, you know, taking a classes or taking the whole course because I'm still running around to figure it out. How can I find the roof over my head the next month?
Well, and you know what, Atta, that's the whole thing, is that if you can get clear on what you're really a good instrument for, and someone like Langdon could use your help, and he knows someone where you can get shelter, and you can get to his place, you know, things can work out without money.
and things can also bring money.
And he can, you know, you can get a job doing something related to what you'd like, gets you closer, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the ideas.
Oh.
I think in general it's a new concept of for me. I was never, I think because I was always believe in self-sufficiency, me always doing everything 100%, providing for myself, never asking or never reaching out. Like networking feels like using other people. To me, because I'm not from US, right? I'm from Poland. So the mentality also brings some barriers to even accepting any kind of help or guidance or even, in any capacity. So that's very new idea for me to be open to actually ask for anything or receive in any way. So I just wanted to say that, you know, this is all new, the concept of being able to, I don't want to say use someone else connections or use someone else. It just feels cringy for me.
Well, we think of this as, we think of this as mutual aid. So it's not taking advantage of anyone. We're expecting as much from you as
Right,
we're offering.
right.
Now, Shane
Okay.
had his hand up, and after
But
he
Lisa-
speaks,
Thank you.
we want Lisa to
Lisa?
go, but is it direct response, Shane? So do you want to respond directly to what we've been talking about?
Or should Lisa go and just introduce herself?
I'd like to meet Lisa.
Oh,
Okay.
sure. And then we come back to you.
Hi. Sorry for jumping on late. I didn't know this existed until I clicked on it and then noticed that it was happening. So I just decided to join. Is there something specific I should talk about, or should I just?
What brought you to the Right Livelihood call?
Oh, well, things at my job are not going so well. No, but I am doing a job that provides me health insurance. That's the reason why I took the job. I've been doing it for I'm a technical writer at a tech company. I don't have a background in technology. I took the job, I got it through my dad. I took the job for health insurance back in January 2021. And because of the war in Ukraine, it's an outsourcing company, and my project was primarily staffed with people from Russia or in Russia. And because of the war, my project was canceled because my company cut all operations in Russia. So then I got cut from a project. So now I'm on the bench. And but because it's an outsourcing company and I'm kind of closer to entry level, there's not a lot of opportunities for me there. I'm having to apply out and to random positions. And the whole time I'm asking myself why I'm doing this, because I really don't like technology at all. So it's just, yeah, I really feel like I'm banging my head against the wall. Like I was just in a work training that just was so boring and I didn't care about. I have been part of Earth Regenerators, I think, since like January of this year. I did the learning journey that was happening, I think, between January and March, and then I kind of dropped off. I traveled a little bit, but I have a background in economics. I'm really interested in local economies, but I don't know, I have like a really specific thing that I'd like to do, and I don't know how to get money for it. And I don't really have the right tools to do what I want to do either, like the right kind of plan. So I want to start working on this stuff. I want to figure out how to afford to live and do the things that I want to do, because I'm really bored of doing things that other people want me to do. So I was just actually really glad to see this pop up as I was clicking through Earth Regenerators groups that I've been joining and trying to read about. So
Yes,
that's the
well,
general overview.
you're absolutely in the right place. And thank you so much for being here.
And please tell us what that specific thing is.
So I'm thinking about how to explain it. Okay, I graduated college. I studied a little bit of sustainable development, a little bit of gender economics, a little bit of behavioral economics. I wrote an experimental behavioral economics thesis for my graduation, and then I tried to work in academia, and I worked for 2 economists part-time. One had me doing more qualitative literature reviews, the other had me doing quantitative data analysis. And it was it felt so weird because doing that kind of work was just not the reason why I got into economics in the first place. I'm curious about the way people live and the decisions they make and the way that they decide to share or not share resources. But it felt really impersonal. Like the literature reviews that I was reading, the project was about like, it was called The Costs of Menstruation for women and girls in low-income countries. And I was reading so many papers that like would do these surveys and the data was inconclusive, and it was just so boring. And but also like I didn't know, you know, like who is that helping? And so I realized I also participated in a feminist economics conference sponsored by the IAFFE, International Association for Feminist Economics. And like going there was just like, it was a crazy experience seeing how much of an echo chamber academia is, and how little people actually wanted to like talk and share ideas. So then I decided academia wasn't for me. I tried to freelance, that went badly. Then I worked at Trader Joe's, then I got my job. But anyway, so before I started just kind of working for a wage because I had nothing better to do, I started becoming interested in kind of projects that people were doing to feed themselves and maybe to do some conservation work. And I haven't learned of any sort of projects that I don't even know to the extent to which like Joe and the people in Barichara are like actively like studying their economic activity and relationships, like specifically that realm of like their lives. But anyway, so I would really like to kind of in a comparative way learn about the way that people are trying to set up their lives and livelihoods, like learn about the impact that they're having on their local communities, whether people are able to come to them for resources and whether those resources are expanding. But then I also, I really think that it would be useless to put any information that I could get from that sort of a learning journey into like traditional academic formats, because nobody reads them and it's super competitive and they go nowhere. So I would rather communicate about what I learn in a more storytelling way. I've been doing photography for a while and I like to write, but I think like my ultimate thing would be to make videos or like documentary type things that are shareable on the internet for people who don't have expertise in economics and anthropology and all these super dense like theoretical worlds.
Well, it's brilliant what you're saying. And already somebody, I think it's Shane, said, I should connect you with somebody in the network who thinks like you. And maybe if you can put your information in, Shane can connect you. Put your, email, phone number. Where are you now?
I'm in New York City on the Upper West Side.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, we're in Rochester, New York.
Oh, really?
And
Yeah.
yes, and I do want to say that, yes, there's a lot of interest in how we put our lives together economically. And there is a gift economy group that has got some really interesting and innovative ideas and some people with a lot of technological skills working on it, and many others who are working on telling a new story about how we live together and building inspirational capital.
And, at the beginning of the call, there was someone named Steve Welser. And is this going to be posted?
Yes, this is
recording?
call is recorded,
So
and
if
we'll
you-
post it. And
If
we'll
you
put a link to it.
listen to from
The first half hour or so.
the first, particularly 15 minutes in, and then for another 20 minutes, Steve is talking about eco-villages and right livelihood. And that's where I'm seeing that, you might be, it might be a world for you to explore.
Yeah,
Right.
that would be really cool.
So,
Yeah.
but I didn't realize that, we're
We're
coming
almost-
up on an hour and a half that went
Yeah.
by so fast. So Shane.
Shane.
Oh,
Sorry, I just want to assure Lisa and everybody that I'm not ignoring. I'm studying my black currants to freeze them so I can just throw them right into my cereal. Yeah. What are they? Antioxidants for the winter, yeah. So I'm a recovering academic. I can't stand the titles they use either. And I find, yeah, I got really frustrated. I helped a colleague edit a book, update a book on international environmental politics, and it sold 500 copies the first year. And the second year, more copies were returned than were sold. And, you know, we spent months on it. So I totally encourage you to, you know, find outlets that get seen. I think it's really important. My hand went up. My hand went up when Ada was talking in relation, I think, to what Steve was saying about the village, the village economy, and putting ourselves, maybe finding our livelihoods or our worth or our contributions at the level of a village. And I thought that it was kind of really pointed what he was saying, you know, like we are easily drawn into working for the Leviathan, working for the monstrosity that we adamantly oppose, and that so is so contrary to our values. Like, I'm not sure, I can't remember, frankly, what Ada was saying exactly, but it was in my mind that it was at the level of the village that I thought maybe you could be looking. And maybe it had to do with Langdon, about the localization, about, you know what, he's in the network and he's right here and he's working, you know, a little outside in his area of expertise, but I feel like what he's doing is pretty grounded. He's very interesting person. And our friends Jonathan and Victoria here are amazing at doing this connecting work within the village, I think, and outside. But, you know, maybe it's as much about bringing those others into the village as it is allowing us villagers to sell ourselves to that monster that Steve was talking about. So, it might have been more pointed a few minutes back, but that's all I got for now.
Well, thank you so much for pointing to the connector role. You know, Victoria's been a connector all her life. I've never thought of myself as such, but Paul Hawken, in one of his comments, his interviews about, you know, following the book Regeneration, said the work of regeneration is connecting people in nature, connecting people with each other, and with their ultimate purpose in life. So thank you so much for bringing that to the fore. And Vivek.
Yeah, and before we all go, Shane, you and I can talk, because I just had some ideas about how you might be able to actualize your vision of working with children, showing them how to smell the flowers and the bees and see the bees and all that. So
Thanks, Victoria.
I got my contact information here. Vivek.
Oh, just a message to, was it Lisa? Yeah, I didn't know if you saw it in the chat, but the person that came to mind as I heard your story was someone named Chad Manfreda.
Mm-hmm.
He would be an interesting person to talk to. He's kind of been in the academic realm of trying to think about, I guess, sustainable economics, and I think he's in Barichara trying to figure out how to do this in a more applied way. So
yeah, I'll definitely reach out to him. Thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah. Great.
So you know how to use the network and talk to Chad. You could do that yourself.
Yeah, I've messaged people on the
website. Yeah,
Great.
just say
it takes a little work to figure it all out, but it's quite a useful system once you get used to it.
And if for some reason he doesn't respond because he only goes to email or something, be in touch with us and we'll get you his email or whatever.
Yeah, we'll help to make the connection.
He's a water specialist,
Chad?
but somebody's saying he's an economist. Okay,
yeah. All right. Well,
Darren, I know. I mean, yes, you might want to have something because you don't have a place to put your hand up. Can we just
a couple of minutes?
Did you want to talk?
And if people want to say anything on the way out, to complete what they got, what they
Yeah.
were interested in, we can stay around for as long as you want to continue.
So Darren, I was specifically saying, since you don't have a way to raise your hand, if you want to speak, we're all going to go around the room and just say a few closing things, what we got, you know, or just whatever. You can start.
So I'm reading a book, I finished it, by Graham Boyd, Rebuild. He's working on Fair Shares Commons. And so I'll email, I'll put it in the chat after I finish that. His work is on the Fair Shares Commons, and he's coming from academia and Procter and Gamble, and so his story is similar to mine in that I know the system is wrong. We're communal creatures similar to honeybees. We need enough momentum and guidance from each other to know what direction it is that we're intended to aim towards. So I'll pass it on to Shane.
Great. And I just wanted to say before we go there, that if anybody doesn't know how to save the chat, when you open up the chat, there's 3 dots at the bottom right, and that will allow you to save a copy of the chat to your computer. Maybe more difficult on the phone, but you can do that. So, or you can just send us email and we'll respond. Thank you. Shane?
So it appears that sleeping snails, when taken away from their blackcurrants, wake up. I don't know how many of you have noticed this snail is crawling across my hand. I know Lisa did. Thank you for the smile. I don't know that I have much to say, except here we are in the midst of my life's passion. Look at this thing. You can't see it like I can, but it's
Everybody should put you on speaker instead of, and then we'll see you more clearly.
Yep.
well, it might be my camera. I don't know.
Oh, it's good.
No, we see it.
Yeah.
It's very mobile. I'll be returning him to the garden in moments. But I can't let him have any more of my blackcurrants. And I don't want him in my cereal, frankly. So.
Right. Great. Okay. Do you want to pass it on? And
Sure, Atta, how you doing?
What I supposed to talk about again?
No, just say, you can just say goodbye. Thank you. You can say whatever.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. Thank you for the help. What to say, since I'm new to it. Yeah, it was very helpful for me to be to find myself in this community. So I really appreciate the session. Thank you.
well,
you.
we appreciate your being here very much.
And we definitely want you to rely on other people. We're not here by ourselves. We just can't get it done alone.
Mhm.
You want
So,
to pass it on to who, Vivek or Lisa? What we do, Atta, is just after we talk, then we say, okay, Lisa, your turn, or pass it on to you. Well, okay, we didn't hear you, but somebody talk. You're on mute.
If it's okay, I could go because my phone is
Yeah,
melting
go
in the
ahead.
Texas heat.
Go ahead. Go.
Oh, sorry about that, Lisa. Yeah, I just want to say thanks for hosting this. It was a kind of a different space, some new faces. Yeah, and feel free to. I hope we can keep continuing the conversation. I know there's some things that were probably still burning on your mind, Jonathan. So thank you, and I'll pass to Lisa.
Great.
I just wanted to say I'm sorry I didn't get to hear what all of you guys had to say. It was really nice to just pour all my thoughts out into the space, and maybe I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Well, and I will post the recording, so I would invite you to watch it from the beginning.
If you do want to hear it,
if you're interested.
Yeah, I'll definitely take a look.
Right.
And there's
we'll be
2
back
sessions.
in 2 weeks at the other time slot, which is designed for, the benefit of folks down under in Australia and New Zealand, for them
At
to be
8
able
o'clock
to get
at night. Oh, 8 o'clock Eastern.
Eastern, yeah.
In 2 weeks,
which is
it'll
our
be the
time.
same day, but 8 o'clock Eastern, and then we switch every 2 weeks. Then we do it at this 5 o'clock.
And so we just try to keep on top of the event notifications, and it'll all be good. And I apologize, there was some confusion about the time of this one, and I know at least one person texted me that they missed it. But we look forward to continuing these
fun.
conversations. Great. Yeah, I just see so much potential in all of us to really make a difference in the world. So I really.
And if I have a lot to say, maybe it's because my vocation has been a hobby for me. I mean, taking on new vocations, getting closer and closer to what I'm here for. So I've made it a fun thing every time I go through one of these reinventions.
Great.
All right. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Great time. Thanks. Bye. Did you get
Thank
the
you.
last?
Bye.
Got all the chats?
The chat.
We'll put the chat on the, can you put the chat on the?
I can.
On the
I
site?
can link it
Okay.
as a.
Very good. Thank you. And Shane, if you just want to stay on, I'll just tell you, and maybe, okay, so.
Victoria?
So we know this person named Chris, who has an organization called Rochester Ecology Partners. And he's like a former teacher, and he's really into the kind of things that you're into. And he has created an organization where he's teaching children, after school programs, and we've been to his fundraisers, and and he has a whole board, and he has lots of volunteers. He's a leader. I understand. I felt the same way most of my life. I'm not a leader. I'm not interested. But there may be people where you are that are doing those kinds of things where you could join. Depends on whether you want money, whether you start as a volunteer and maybe you work into a role there, but it might clarify what aspect. But there are, I promise you, there are people in your area doing these kinds of things with their life, whether they're retired or their community things. Get connected with those people. Ask them, do you need money for your time? It would be better than doing the things that you've been doing for money, right?
Well,
So you'd like to replace that, or you can keep doing it. But, if you have some time to volunteer with people doing similar things, and just find out all the different organizations until you find one that you want to stay with, either as a vocation or a volunteer thing, eventually you'll get connected with people who see your talents and your joy and your passion. I mean, that's what children need. That's what even adults need. Before you even get interested in the science of it, you're going to get interested in the excitement of it.
Yeah. And the joy of a little hitchhiker like this guy.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, it's a connection kind of thing. I mean, I happen to be, it's easy for me. I know it's not easy for everybody, but people want to be found. Do you remember that? Were you on that webinar with Joe, wanting to be found? you
I
know?
don't know. I don't know.
But basically, it's
rings
about
a bell.
expressing who you are with people that you meet, that you know, just being who you are, bringing that forward. And when people hear and know that, it would help to say, and I'm looking for whatever, who do you
Mhm.
know that can, you know, talk with me, and, you know, I can find my role in this community because I have something to share, and everybody wants help with whatever they're doing. You just have to find the people doing what you want to be doing.
Well, and the context in which Joe said this was that somebody had raised the question of how do you find the others?
Yeah.
The others who think like you and who are sharing your vision and your concerns. And he said, you don't really go looking for them. You make yourself findable. And
You can go look for them,
the
but
forest,
that's the, you know, the bottom line is you have to be findable.
right, so that they can find you.
So it could be, you know, Facebook, LinkedIn, it could be your
I doubt
newspaper,
it.
the
Facebook
groups
or
in your
LinkedIn.
community, you know, just getting known in there and knowing and having people know that you have some time and some skills and some interests.
And if you check out that website for Rochester Ecology Partners, you'll see somebody who's made that kind of transition. And
Yeah. And he's making a living and he's loving it. And he has an amazing team around him. You know, he's got certain skills, but he doesn't have all of them. He just had the passion. So, you know, anything's possible. By the way, when I thought I couldn't lead and all that kind of stuff, I took this leadership program, and you know what? I could lead. I could have led before. I learned a bunch of things, but you know what? None of it changed who I am. But it just gave me confidence that people will listen to me and whatever. And I'm not the kind of leader that tells them what to do. It's like, what are we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Just need somebody to bring people together and say, what can we do? You know? What do we want to do? Not what can we do? What do we want to do that would make a difference for all of us and for the community? So,
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. I think, you know, there are quite likely volunteer opportunities. And you know, I think that would be a better way to spend my time than some of the ways I spend my time, including some of the volunteer work I do, which is less than passionate for me.
right. And, you know, if you're on a co-op with the, you know, the renewable energy and you're not making any money from it, find somebody else to do it.
Yeah, well, I'm making a little, but
Yeah.
and I'm not making money on much else. So, you know, that's part of it is not wanting to let go of that. You know,
Well,
and
one thing that we can do is connect with you so that you can give us a history of how this came to be, because I know Victoria's been interested in creating a clean energy cooperative.
I
where
have.
we are.
I want to create a cooperative. I wasn't thinking about clean energy cooperative.
Okay,
But all we do is we work with commercial buildings on clean energy, but you're not interested in that.
So, but if you can tell us, share with us your experience, we'll know a lot of things what not to do. You know, things that I mean, we talk about this all the time.
By the way, are you
Now,
familiar with, sorry, are you familiar with Doug Tallamy's work? Of course.
oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. So
I'm a
you
big
could
fan.
probably find the people in your community who are really big on that. And
Yeah, I'm in touch with a
these
few of them.
gardens, and create these gardens in other people's yards. Show them in your yard. We have
I'm so jealous of your berries there.
a healthy yards for, yeah. I mean, if it would help, we can, you know, you want to connect them with healthy yards?
Well, that's another thing. There's
Healthy
an
yards for now?
organization
I
that
just have to go to
started
the bathroom.
in
Yeah.
Westchester called Healthy Yards. And now there's a local one called Healthy Yards, Monroe County. And I don't think they have funding yet, but it's the sort of thing that they're looking for. And it's all about, you know, the nature's best hope kind of concept with the caterpillars and the butterflies and everything else.
I'm living it, Jonathan. I mean, I
Wow.
watched the chickadees collect 10,000 caterpillars for their babies this spring.
Wow.
I mean, I have a little hut in the back, and the birdhouse is right on the hut, and I spent a lot of time out there. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm familiar with the concept, and I've seen it in action, and it has brought me tremendous joy. Okay, so it comes back in a sense to Maslow's hierarchy. It's like, well, how does this passion
Mhm.
provide at the more basic levels of needs?
Yeah.
That's the challenge, I think.
Mhm.
You know what?
So that's what I'm exploring.
Now, you know what? Did we already talk about this idea? But I know in our area, there are people who have read Doug Tallamy's book or who are interested, but they don't have the time or the interest to plant it themselves. I would imagine that if you're willing to plant somebody else's butterfly garden, that they would pay you for it.
This is what you had mentioned last time that actually, sparked an interest. And so I did inquire of a couple of people who had raised this question with me along, maybe over the last year, who weren't actually willing to pay somebody to plant their garden. They just wanted some help, I guess, right? And so there is a market, but making the transition to it is I'd have to at least buy a truck and put a nice logo on the side and hire a helper and drive around.
We have a car and our hatchback.
Landscaping company is what you're talking about.
Well, no.
But no, you don't have to do that.
People often have their own tools and they can pay for them. And
you might just want to trade with people. If they can provide you with things that you want and need, and you can provide them with things that they want and need. It doesn't have to go through the
other thing is
Leviathan created money system.
If you could create a couple of projects and take pictures of them and get testimonials, you could find people that can afford to have somebody plant.
Yeah, we hired a permaculture designer. I have been doing most of the work, but we have paid her, I guess, over the
$2,000,
couple of $1,000. And she's got clients up the yin yang.
She's totally booked.
Yeah. So she's charging, I think, $70 an hour.
$75 an hour.
$75 an hour.
Although when she does that for her consulting, when she's working, I think she says $50 an hour or something like that. Whatever, but that's not bad.
She does have occasional helpers. She can call on people who.
And she says, I can't get them for anything less than $25 an hour. So one of the things is you might talk to some of the landscapers that are doing things that you believe in and work for them,
If there are any, or if there are some that are thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
To them
And who might be a lead to that is places that cater to the upper middle class that sell the plants and the pots in a very artistic setting. Because they probably ask, can you do this for me? They probably ask the proprietor of the store, can you do this for me? And you could be the one who does it for them if they're not already doing it as a test. And they can, it can be kind of arm's length. So, your work doesn't reflect on them until they want it to. So, if you went to one of those stores that isn't doing this right now and said, would it be helpful that you could offer my name if somebody says, could you plant this for me? I don't know what I'm doing. Or
well, there's many different ways to kind of get to this, but it is increasingly important and increasingly of interest to people. And I think that becoming an evangelist for this is, which is part of what I'm doing, and writing about it is kind of
and you're
the next thing.
You're an editor, a writer, an editor. So you write?
Yeah, I'm struggling a bit with writing right now. Partly it's back to that passion thing, right? And partly it's the audience because it's academic work, and I'm a little out of practice. And
What was the academic work in?
oh, it's right now it's environmental policy and politics, and issues, I guess. Yeah, I'm back with some people writing another textbook, and I don't know, my heart's not quite in it, like I'm learning as I'm writing. But of course, to write 1,500 words, you need to study for 25 years. And it's hard when you don't know the field that well, right? And you're reading along something in a few days after you've submitted it, and you read, oh yeah, there was that I forgot about and probably should have mentioned. So I don't know.
Here's another little idea to think about. I started thinking that it would be a good idea to do some writing about carbon gardening.
I am going to go do something now, but goodbye if I don't see you.
If it intrigues you, we can think about putting together a small group of people to write a book on carbon gardening, and then maybe we can do it as a cooperative and all make something from it. If we can sell more than 500 copies and have fewer returned.
No, if you're not, as long as you're not trying the academic market, I mean,
Yeah, sure.
Some things take off and some things don't, right?
Right.
Yeah, what I think I would like to try a little writing on this, and I struggle a little with getting published, but I know a few places where I could probably publish something very quickly about native gardening, about, I think, my experience with the chickadees, and I got a couple of really beautiful pictures of, not quite Doug Tallamy pictures, but, the birds just coming in again and again with these caterpillars, and it's like there's such a pleasure in it. And I feel like I have a task now, Jonathan, and it will be to write about the passion and the pleasure that I experienced from that, and just, see where that goes.
Yeah. No,
there's more people than carbon, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's really great. So to be continued.
Yeah, thanks. I'm really glad to have found the schedule. Can I just ask before you go?
Sure.
There was you mentioned something about setting up email reminders. I'm getting email reminders when people message me, and in some groups, but I didn't get any reminders of this particular course since we started it. And I don't know how much I've missed. I don't know how many sessions you've had, but I think it's been like at least a month, maybe 6 weeks since the last time I was with you on these calls.
Yeah, this may be the third or fourth, but not a lot. And everything that we have done, I posted the video of. And there's something about, I get this thing called a digest every day that says, here's what you missed on Earth Regenerators. And it's not, 1,000 pages. It's, it's a couple of pages. And I think somehow they're either relevant to things that I've signed on for, or they've tagged me in their posts.
Right.
You know how you go at the top of the screen, it's got the messages and the notifications.
Yeah.
It gives you the numbers. But, I wasn't checking that before. I was just kind of reading the stuff that came in at the end of the day. And then JP explained to me that you got to go and set those choices yourself, those preferences, because Mighty Networks has a kind of a default that they don't want to overwhelm you with stuff, because that would be easy to do, and then you'd get frustrated and just forget about it. So
well, I'll check it out.
And I'll make sure that we have some way of notifying all the people who signed up for the Right Livelihood course, because we have, I don't know, 30, 40 people now, maybe more.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you've got 20 coming out to events, that's not bad,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So,
Yeah, no, we're happy with this. It's along with the work that I'm doing on the fiscal sponsorship stuff, to handling the finances and figuring out how we're going to manage all that.
mhm.
This is part of the substance of what we care about. The other stuff is kind of more like accounting. It doesn't
Yeah.
interest me in itself, but it does interest me to do it for a group like this.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice. I was wondering if Lisa had skills in that department or not. It wasn't quite clear from her.
Right.
She was here, but you know.
Well, thank
she
you,
was
and to be continued.
Yeah. Okay. No. Thanks a lot, Jonathan.
Great.
Take care. We'll
Okay.
talk to you soon.
Yeah. Bye.